Okay, so we will do part two of this chapter now.
Power sharing.
Power sharing in civics. So chapter one. In part one, we studied from these notes that we have. We Let me open the book again. Yeah, here we go. So what did we do? We talked about the overview that legislature and executive and judiciary, how these are the three organs of government, how these are important organs of a democratic government. And we saw the examples of Belgium and Sri Lanka, where there are different types of ethnic communities.
The ethnic composition of the Belgium and Sri Lanka.
Right, as you can see on this map, the yellow part is Flemish, Dutch speaking.
Yes.
And the red part is the Walloons. They are the French speaking. So if you see, Dutch are the Dutch speaking community is 59%.
Yes.
And the French speaking community is how much? 40%.
And 1% German.
1% Germans. So despite all this, and this striped part is Germany, German speaking community. So they did not go for domination of the majority.
Yes.
In the country. They shared the power with all the communities in the country, which are French, Dutch, and German speaking. So as a result of that, there was no civil war, there was no distrust between communities, and there was it was a smooth flow for them.
Yes.
Contrary to that, in Sri Lanka we saw what?
Nothing.
Contrary to that, in Sri Lanka we saw that there was a civil war, because the Sinhalas, who were 74% of the population of the country, they were in majority, and they went for majoritarianism, as is given here. And they tried to suppress the Tamil, Sri Lankan Tamilians and the Indian Tamilians, who stayed in the northeastern part of the country, as is shown here in the map here. Okay, so that resulted in a civil war, right? And then they showed how Belgium had the sharing of power at the central level, at the
Yes.
state level, and Brussels, the
As well,
capital.
yes.
It had its own
Government.
government. So we discussed all this in part one, and we are going to go on to, and we also saw the benefits, right?
Yes.
The benefits of power sharing, which was here, right? Why power sharing is desirable. So we studied till here in part one, and this is part two of the chapter. In this, we are going to study two things. Number one is Halil's dilemma. Khalil is a Lebanese. Yeah, Khalil is a Lebanese, and he is explaining. I mean, in this case study, we are going to see how Lebanon also has different ethnic communities staying together, and how they share power. And earlier there was a lot of unrest, but now after they reach an agreement about power sharing, there is peace in the country. And then we are going to see the forms of power sharing. What are the different forms of power sharing? And then that's the end of the chapter. So there is not
Yes.
much to be done in this one. So let us jump to. So we started with the overview, then Belgium, composition of the population, power sharing in Belgium, accommodation in Belgium, how did they accommodate everyone in the government. Then we went on to Sri Lanka, what is the composition of the Sri Lankan government, how did they go for majoritarianism,
Yes.
and all these things, and then how the resentment was there because they were suppressed in the civil war, and then the benefits of power sharing. So we are going to start with
Halils Dilemma.
Halil's Dilemma, right? So in Halil's Dilemma, these are two friends, Vikram and Vettel. Vikram and Vettel. Vikram is driving the motorbike, and Vettel is the pillion rider, the one who is sitting behind him. And to keep Vikram awake, Vettel is telling him a story, right? Because he doesn't want Vikram to fall off to sleep. So while driving, so he's telling him a story. So the story goes like this: in the city of Beirut, which is the capital of Lebanon, there,
Can I read?
yeah,
Okay, so in the city of Beirut, capital of Lebanon, there lived a man called Khalil. His parents came from different communities. His father was an Orthodox Christian and his mother a Sunni Muslim. This was once not so uncommon in this modern cosmopolitan city. People from various communities that lived in Lebanon came to its capital, Beirut.
so like in India,
like in India.
In Delhi, a lot of people from all over India come
have
to
so many
Delhi.
people.
That is why it keeps expanding and the population keeps going up, because Delhi is a place where you find jobs, and so a lot of people from different parts of Lebanon have also
Incredible
come to Beirut.
diversity in Delhi.
Yeah.
So they lived together, intermingled, yet fought a bitter civil war among them. One of Khalil's uncles was killed in that war.
Yes.
At the end of the civil war, Lebanon's leaders then came together and agreed on some basic rules for power sharing among different communities. As per these rules, the country's president must belong to the Maronite sect of Catholic Christians. The prime minister must be from the Sunni Muslim community. The post of deputy prime minister is fixed for Orthodox Christian sect, and that of the speaker is for Shia Muslims.
So what is happening here? There is nothing like majoritarianism, or even for that matter. So they are dividing the power according to the different religions that they have.
Yes.
So a person who is a Christian can only be the president of the country.
Well, who's a Catholic Christian?
Yeah, Maronite
Maronite
sect
sect.
of the Catholic Christians. And the prime minister can be a Sunni Muslim. So a Sunni Muslim cannot be the president of the country.
Yes.
And to balance the power, they want to keep everyone happy. So deputy prime minister is an Orthodox Christian, and the speaker is a Shiite Muslim. So under this pact, the Christians agreed not to seek French protection.
Yes.
And
the Muslims agreed not to seek reunification with the neighboring state of Syria.
Yeah.
And when the Christian and the Muslims came to this agreement, they were nearly equal in population. Both sides have continued to respect this agreement, though now the Muslims are in clear majority.
Yes. So even though Muslims are in a clear majority, but they have continued with the agreement that they had about power sharing.
Yes. So Khalil doesn't like this system one bit. He is a popular man with political ambition, but under the present system, the top position is out of his reach. He does not practice either his father's or his mother's religion, and does not.
So
wish
what
to
is
be
his
known
father's
by,
religion?
He was an Orthodox Christian,
And
his mother was a Sunni Muslim, and
Correct.
he is an atheist.
Well, doesn't say he's an atheist.
I mean, if he doesn't practice any
well,
religion, so
okay.
or he could be practicing some other religion.
Well, it doesn't
That's
say
true.
he practices any, but he doesn't go by any of these two
Yeah,
beliefs.
so he cannot understand why Lebanon cannot be like any other normal democracy. Just hold an election, allow everyone to contest, and whoever wins maximum votes becomes the president, no matter which community he comes from. Why can't we do this like other democracies of the world? He asks. His elders, who have seen the bloodshed of the civil war, tell him that the present system is the best guarantee for peace. The story was not finished, but they had reached the TV tower where they stopped every day. Vittel wrapped up quickly and posed his customary question to Vikram. If you had the power to rewrite the rules in Lebanon, what would you do? Would you adopt the regular rules followed everywhere, as Khalil suggests, or stick to the old rules, or do something else? Vittel did not forget to remind Vikram of their basic pact. If you have an answer in mind and yet do not speak up, your mobile will freeze, and so will you.
So here is another example of power sharing, how Lebanon has done it.
Yes.
That they have, given some key positions to the people, to a representative of different religions, prominent religions in Lebanon. Okay, so we talk about the forms of power sharing now. Okay.
Yes.
So it's the same thing word by word from the book, but just that it has been kind of rearranged in the form of points. Easy to read. So the idea of undivided, so there are two ideas. One is democracy, the other is undivided political power.
Yes.
Right? So undivided political power means.
The idea of power sharing has emerged in opposition to the notions of undivided political power. For a
Right.
long time, it was believed that all power of a government must reside in one person or group of persons located at one place. It was felt that if the power was decided to be dispersed, it would not be possible to take quick decisions and to enforce them.
So,
So-
which means that it says that all the power should be concentrated or should reside in one person, like
Like
a
a monarchy
dictator,
or a dictator.
or a king, or a group of persons only. So there should not be multiple political parties who can be, in power one after the other. So
Yes.
why? What is the reason?
They say that if the power is decided to be dispersed,
They cannot take quick
yeah,
decisions.
they can't take quick decisions and cannot enforce them.
Yes.
While this is true, that is one of the demerits of democracy. However, if the merits of democracy is that it allows more people to be consulted, so bad decisions can't be taken quickly either. So these notions have changed with the emergence of democracy. So the idea of democracy, we move on now. One basic principle of democracy is that the people are the source of all political power. In a democracy, people rule themselves through institutions of self-government, which means that they elect their own government and send their representatives to rule them. Point 3 is that in a good democratic government, due respect is given to diverse groups and views that exist in a society, also known as one aspect of that is the rule of law, which means that everyone is equal before the government and law. Everyone has a voice in the shaping of public policies. Again, the participation of the citizen is the keystone of democracy. Therefore, it follows that in a democracy, political power should be distributed amongst as many citizens as possible, because that will ensure as much participation of citizens and as much representation of citizens into the political system, and give them a stake and a say in what's happening in the country.
Through elections and
Yes,
voting.
through elections and voting.
So we have some forms of power
Power
sharing.
sharing.
So we have three forms. Number one is power shared among different organs of the government, like legislature, executive, and judiciary.
Yes.
This is one form. Second form is the federal division of power, where you have, vertical
Division of power.
we have
There's
central
different
government,
levels,
state
yeah.
government,
different levels of government which are
panchayat,
subordinate
municipality,
to. Yes.
these types of governments. Then power shared among different social groups. These are religious groups, political groups. And the fourth type is also pressure groups, which are movements and also corporate industrial groups.
Yes, as well as coalition governments.
Coalition governments are here in this one. Power shared among different social groups.
It says, go down, one sec. It says power sharing arrangements in the way of political parties. So,
No, power sharing arrangements in the way political parties, pressure groups, and movements control or influence.
yes, to form an alliance, if they're alliances, they form a coalition government.
Yes.
to share power. Anyway, yeah.
Okay, fine. So let us see these forms one by one. Forms of power sharing.
Yes.
Go on. In modern democracies.
Okay. In modern democracies, power sharing arrangements can take many forms. Let us look at some of the most common arrangements that we have or will come across. So the first arrangement is power shared among different organs of the government, such as legislature, executive, and judiciary. So here, as we already know, the democracies have three different organs of government: the legislature, executive, and judiciary. Let us call this the horizontal distribution of power, because it allows different organs of the government to be placed at the same level but yet exercise different powers.
So it is a horizontal
Yes.
distribution of power, which means that one is not superior to the other, or one is not
Yeah.
subordinate to the other.
Yeah.
So they are working parallelly.
Yes.
So it is a horizontal distribution of power, because it allows different organs of government placed at the same level to exercise different powers. So they are placed at the same level.
Yes. So
Right.
they are equally powerful.
Right.
Such a separation ensures that none of the organs can exercise unlimited power. Each organ checks the others. This results in a balance of power among various institutions. In a democracy, even though ministers and government officials exercise power, they are responsible to the parliament or state assemblies. And similarly, although judges are appointed by the executive, they can check the functioning of the executive or laws made by the legislatures. This arrangement is called the system of checks and balances.
So here, in a democracy, even though ministers and government officials exercise power, they are responsible to the parliament or state assemblies.
Yes.
So whatever they do in the whatever the ministers do in their ministries and the government officials, whatever they do, they are responsible. They can be questioned in the parliament. They have to
Yes.
defend their policies. They have to defend their decisions. They have to defend their performance. So there is a parliament session,
Yes.
which is called the Sansad.
I see.
Parliament is Sansad and
Sansad.
session is Satr. Sansad ka Satr hota hai. And then likewise there are state assemblies also.
I see.
Okay, so there is Vidhan Sabha,
Yeah.
which is state assembly,
State assembly,
and Lok Sabha.
which is the people's
Lok Sabha is the lower house
lower
in the
house or the
parliament in New
people's
Delhi,
house. Yeah.
and the Rajya Sabha, which is the upper
House.
So in India we have these three. So when they have a parliament session, there is a speaker at the top. He kind of administers and moderates the proceedings in the parliament session, and then opposition and the people in power, there is a question answer session. They have to explain and justify their policies and all. So in a democracy, even though ministers and government officials have powers because they are put in those positions, but they are not like absolute. They are responsible to the parliament or state assemblies, right? Similarly, though judges are appointed by executive, who are the executives? These are the
people who enforce laws.
Yeah.
Implement laws. Ministers, IAS officers,
Right.
IPS officer, or no, IPS? I don't think IPS. IAS
Mm,
officers,
yeah.
ministers, constables, police, stuff like that. Those all come under executive.
Yeah. The ones who are implementing the laws.
Yes.
All the officers who are implementing the laws. So they are the ones who are appointing the judges. They can check the functioning of executive or laws made by the legislatures.
Yes.
This arrangement is also called a system of checks and balances,
Yes.
right? So
So
the next
then-
one is
Federal division of power. It means power can be shared among governments at different levels. A general government for the entire country and governments at the provincial or regional level.
The general government is there for the entire country.
Like the governments.
Like in Belgium, we saw
Yeah.
there was a central government.
And then there was one for
And
Brussels and the state government.
One for Brussels and the state governments also. We can call it provincial at the provincial level or at the regional level.
Yes.
So two types of governments: the general government so in India we call it central government
Central government.
or the union government.
So such a general government for the entire country is usually called the federal government. In India, we refer to it as a central or union government. The governments at the provincial or regional levels are also called by different names in different countries. In India, we call them state governments. And this system is not followed in all countries. There are many countries where there are no provincial or state governments, but in those countries like ours, where there are different levels of the government, the constitution clearly lays down the powers of the different levels of the government. This is what they did in Belgium, but it was refused in Sri Lanka, as
Right.
we know that they went for a majoritarian form of government.
Right.
This is
So the constitution is there, which is basically laying down what are the powers of
The
the
different-
governments of at the different levels, state level, provincial level, even the center's power, everything is given in the constitution.
Yes.
Hmm.
This is also called the federal division of power. The same principle can be extended to levels of lower government other than state or lower
Lower than
than state government, such as the municipality and panchayat raj. Division of powers includes higher levels and lower levels of government, which is also called the vertical division of power.
Right. So in the first one, we had legislature, judiciary, executive. So that was a horizontal level.
Because they
This
were
is-
all equally powerful. This is vertical because the different levels, like lower levels, are subordinate to higher levels.
So
right?
what is the hierarchy then in the vertical division?
In India, the hierarchy is central government, state government, and then municipality or panchayat raj government.
All right.
Panchayat raj for villages and state government, or municipality for like cities. And
Cities.
stuff. So then we have the third one, which is power shared among different social groups, such as the religious and linguistic groups. Community governments in Belgium is a good example of this arrangement.
So we saw that we had the community government in Belgium where we
Yes.
the different communities are there, the French community, Dutch community, German community, German speaking people. So
Yes.
every community has a community government which is taking decisions on
Cultural,
cultural
educational,
issues,
and
education,
religious
religion, language,
language. Yes.
issues. So a community government is there.
Yes.
So this third type of government power sharing is among different social groups, such as the religious and linguistic groups. Community government in Belgium is a good example of this arrangement. In some countries, there are constitutional and legal arrangements whereby socially weaker section and women are represented in the legislature and administration. Even in the Indian Parliament, especially the Rajya Sabha, there are some seats reserved
I think there are 1/3 of the seats that are reserved for women.
for women, right?
Yes.
So for the weaker section who are very few in numbers and
Yes.
they cannot be elected when there is an election happening, then because their supporters are only a few, they cannot get elected and come to power. So there is a provision that people from these kind of smaller communities and social groups,
social caste, social tribes, or scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, and other backwards classes.
scheduled tribes, scheduled yes. So their representatives are picked on the basis of their social group and
Yes.
community. So
In India,
and their representation is there in legislature as well as in administration.
So in India, we have a system of reserved constituencies in assemblies and parliament. This type of arrangement is meant to give space in the government and administration to diverse social groups who otherwise would feel alienated from the government, such as scheduled tribes, scheduled castes, and other backward classes. This method is used to give minority communities a fair share in power, as we discussed already.
Right.
Then power sharing arrangements in the way of political parties, pressure groups, and movements control or influence those in power. To control or influence those in power. In a democracy, the citizens must have free
power sharing arrangements in the way
of political
who can influence power? Political parties.
Yes.
They can influence power. Pressure groups.
Yes.
Pressure groups can be corporate groups, industrial groups,
Yes.
or some communities, and also
Movements.
some movements. We'll see these examples.
Yes.
Okay,
They
how
can
these people can
influence those in power. So in a democracy, the citizens must have freedom to choose among various contenders for power. In contemporary democracies, this takes the form of competition among different parties, like we studied in 9th grade, free and fair electoral competition. Such competition ensures that power does not remain in one hand. In the long run, power is shared among different political parties that represent different ideologies and social groups. Sometimes this kind of power sharing can be direct when two or more parties form an alliance and contest elections. If their alliance is elected, they form a coalition government and thus share power.
So, what is a coalition government then?
When more than one political party join together to create a government, either because they just want to work together or because no party has clear majority in the parliament.
So, like we saw the case of Germany. In Germany, Angela Merkel, she's a chancellor. So here is an example of coalition government shown in this cartoon. Fine German engineering, where they are showing that the coalition governments of Christian Democratic Union
and
Social Democratic Party, they formed a coalition government because any one party on its own could not get majority votes.
Yes.
So two of the biggest parties, they come together and they form the government, and they have a say in the policies that are made for the country.
Yes.
So we are on the fourth type. So here
So
we are.
yeah. So
Coalition government. So two political parties can come together, and they can form a coalition government.
Yes. So
This
now,
can be one way of sharing power,
Yes.
right?
So now, in a democracy, we find interest groups such as those of traders, businessmen, industrialists, farmers, and industrial workers. They also will have a share in governmental power, either through participation in governmental committees or bringing influence to the decision-making process.
Right. So these type of pressure groups are there, as we just saw here, that pressure groups and movements. Pressure groups and movements, they also control influence of power. So groups like interest groups such as traders, businessmen,
industrialists, farmers, and industrial workers.
Right.
Yes. So they also will have a share in governmental power, either through participation or government.
Sometimes what happens is like Arvind Kejriwal from the Aam Aadmi Party. He earlier started a movement against corruption. You know? And then it became a pressure group then, because the government he got a lot of support from all over the country, and ultimately it turned into a political party, and as of today he is serving his second term as the chief minister of the capital of India.
Yes.
So a pressure group can also influence power sharing in the country, and in this case, as we see, these are different types of pressure groups. Like traders, businessmen, industrialists, farmers, and industrial workers, and they also will have a share in government power, either through participation in the government committees or influencing decision-making process.
So now,
let me go back to the book here, because we finished the chapter, and these are some questions at the end. Okay.
Yes.
So let me just make it bigger for you.
Spread it across. Yeah.
Right.
There we go.
So we finish it. We shall study the working of the political parties, pressure groups, and social movements in Unit 3. Okay.
In detail, in this sense.
They also will have a share in government power, either through participation in governmental committees or bringing influence on the decision-making process.
Yes.
Right. So these are some examples of power sharing, and we have to tell what kind of power sharing is happening in these examples.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, the watermark.
Okay. So I have put this here in the notes also. Let us see these examples.
So
which of the 4 examples of power sharing do these represent? Who is sharing power with whom? Okay. So first example given here is the Bombay High Court. Okay. Where is that? Yes. The Bombay High Court ordered the Maharashtra state government to immediately take action, okay, and improve living conditions of 2,000 odd children.
Yes.
In
the 7 children's homes in Mumbai.
Right.
That is.
So the Mumbai High Court, go on.
So the Bombay or Mumbai High Court ordered Maharashtra state government to immediately take action and improve living conditions for the 2,000 odd children at 7 children's homes in Mumbai. So the answer is a form of sharing, power sharing.
So you see, the sharing is happening between Mumbai High Court, which is judiciary,
and
right?
Maharashtra state government,
and the state government is executive, right?
Yes.
So the power sharing among different organs of the government is happening. One organ is executive, which is the state government, and the other is the High Court, which is judiciary, right? So the power sharing here is happening between the executive, state government is sharing power with judiciary, the Bombay High Court.
Yeah.
Clear?
So the government of the Ontario state in Canada has agreed to a land claim settlement with the Aboriginal community. The minister responsible for Native Affairs announced that the government would work with the Aboriginal people in a spirit of mutual respect and cooperation. So here, it is power among different social groups because of the Aboriginal community being a social group, and as well as the minister. So yeah.
Right. So Ontario is sharing power with the social group, which is the Aboriginal community, okay,
Yes.
and through the Minister of Native Affairs,
Yeah.
right? We read that these are social groups are there in the third one,
Yes.
right? Social groups, right? Like community government, social groups are there.
Yes.
Aboriginals are the social group,
Yes.
right? So this is the second example given, and the third example is, go on.
Russia's two influential political parties, a union of right forces and the liberal Yabloko movement, agreed to unite their organizations in a strong right-wing coalition.
Okay.
They propose to have a common list of candidates in the next parliament of elections, answer type 4, because they two political parties are sharing power directly and forming an alliance in hopes to make a coalition government.
Right. So, pressure groups, these are pressure groups, political parties or pressure groups. Type 4 that we studied, right?
Mm-hmm.
In type 4, we have political parties forming coalitions of pressure groups and movements. They are controlling or influencing the sharing of power. So, two political parties are sharing power here.
Yes.
And the last one?
Last one, the finance ministers of various states in Nigeria got together and demanded that the federal government declare its source of income. They also wanted to know the formula by which the revenue is distributed to various states. It's federal division of power, because federal government is sharing power with the state government, so sharing between different levels of government.
Right. So what is happening? That the finance ministers of different states of Nigeria, they are getting together.
Yeah.
And they are questioning the state government.
No, the
federal government. The central government or the federal government, and asking them to explain the formula for sharing the resources, the financial resources, how the money is allocated to the different states. There should be transparency. There should not be any, favoritism.
Yes.
And also the people, the finance minister should know how much the government, the center has, how much the central government money, how much of the budget it has, and all those things. So here there is a sharing of power between the federal government and state governments. Okay. So this is what it was, the finance minister of various states in Nigeria. So it brings us to the end of this chapter. As far as the chapter is concerned, now we will see the questions separately.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So that's about it, about
power
sharing. Right? There we go.